So at last week's class, I'm assuming the same guys were there, or most of them that were there the week before, for kind of comments.
Yeah. I think
what was their reaction to, what did you find interesting that they picked up on? Not the obvious sort of stuff. And just from my point of view, did they annoy? Did it annoy them about that it was a technique and they felt clunky? And
no, I think one of the really good impressions that I got was that they weren't thinking about it in terms of a technique. But then again, I've drilled that into people again and again, that you're using another person as a feedback mechanism, as opposed to trying to force something, you know, a square peg into a round hole to make the technique work. So move away from the idea of a technique, or rather, you know, you could call it, you know, the technique, the principle that you're trying to use. But I think that was on the following week. What was interesting after the workshop was that when things weren't going right for them, what they did was that the tendency was to force it. So instead of feeling, try to muscle through. And I think that's
which was kind of the whole part of the key thing that we were trying to get across.
Yeah.
Which was, there's one body to another, for example. Whoever's initiating, whether you're striking or whether you're joining with them, however you choose to meet them, my point, where I think they've really, and it's probably, you know, the fault's entirely mine, and it's something I probably, because of my limited teaching experience and conveying an internalisation of an experience, it could be, if they were doing it at half speed or 3/4 speed, for me, whatever it was, fist coming that way, you know, I would naturally kind of move like that now. At speed, relatively, when they were doing it, I could find myself there. It might take me years to do that. But for them to kind of do, you know, yin dao, xiao dao, there the attack's coming, here he moves, or however it's kind of happening, the initiation of the whole thing, even in the negative space, so the point of, there's the distance, kind of, it was interesting to me, and it's something I think of, or reciprocation. There is, the greatest truth is that actually, even though one's initiating and one's receiving, as it were, at a high level you're doing the same, the feeling is the same. So my engagement to you, if I'm attacking you, would be, maybe if it's quick, it might be that. But actually, if I'm going through the motion correctly, if we're mirroring it at a level, I think even that initiation of moving through the space, way before the 2 points have met, the feelingness in the beginning of the technique initiate correctly. And that was something that I came back to you and said, oh, I probably should have said, look, let's do it at half speed first, not because, I mean, I'll use certain people more than others. It becomes then the technique, and they're forgetting the whole principles of the thing, moving through the gap. It gives them the chance to move through the gap, and then when they meet at the point, it's not about, oh, let's do a lovely technique. It's, you've moved through the gap, you're already 2/3 of the way through by the time you've met them. Whether you choose to strike, disintegrate them, decentralise them, or whatever, you're already in the right niche or gutter, as you'd call it, in order to apply the thing. And that was kind of very interesting to me. And it's probably something coming from my background, that it was an aha thing. Actually, the truth is the real knowledge you learn is from receiving and being receptive to the technique. You're not doing it to be touchy-feely, you're doing it because it's a very high level of martial understanding.
Yeah.
I think I said it to Jeff at some point. He was there, and at some point he had quite a nice feeling, and I said, well, that's good. Now look, I've closed to you. Look, if I'm here, this is lethal here, so it's very key that you don't drop the feeling, that you don't drop this, even if you haven't put the 5 ends in, you kind of gone, I'm in the middle of it, I haven't done that, but I'm receiving it now.
Yeah.
So instead of me applying it, I've come in, you've come to the side of me, and it's there. But I've got to have this mindfulness to re-engage with you, using the correct thing. It's not, oh right, you're round my back, there you go, I'm dead. Yeah. That's not the thing. Yeah. This kind of aliveness will also keep the person who's doing it active and as part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, here he goes, I'm going to do it to him, he's going to do the move on me, he's got me by the neck or he struck me.
It's the process.
Yeah. There's as much onus on the initiator to live in that feelingness and to go through the Nei Jia tenets as there is on the person receiving it and applying it. Does that make sense?
I think you're right. I mean, from my perspective, one of the big things. When I say things, I mean one of the big experiences was touching hands with Rose Lee, because you got that feedback, you got that feel that the whole idea was this oiled bearing.
You're never quite there, are you? You've never quite got purchase on the situation.
Exactly right.
You want to get it, but you can't.
But it was the process of what she was doing. It wasn't, in a sense, the final result. It wasn't the technique. It was actually the instigation of this. I like the idea of this concept of pre-movement. It was almost like the pre-technique. It was the lead up, because what you're doing is essentially learning a movement paradigm, how you move within this expansion contraction cycle, and that's the thing that you're trying to get the feel of. That's right. You're trying to garner, and it's not the I've thrown you. And a lot of the time, I mean, what was interesting with the guys last week wasn't when they got it right, but when they got it wrong. So, for example, what I was asking them to do was start to engage and then try and feel what foot their partner was on. So I was
adjust accordingly.
And then make the choice. Do you want to place them on one foot, or do you want to place them on the other? And it was almost that kind of engagement, because they'd not really had this experience before. They found that quite difficult. And because what you do is that you think of it as a technique. It's not a technique. It's a being. It's a state of being.
Which is
the crux.
And which is the beauty of all of Nei Jia, and which is why you need to do it for, particularly if you haven't come from anything else, probably 20 years, 10, 15 years. Yeah. You're doing it. You're up and down. Take brush. Now you're moving through brush. Now you're doing that. You're moving effectively your form surface through the gap for so many years. But at some point, and again, this kind of partner work that's not limited into a push, stereotype way. Where it's good is they shouldn't be freezing or thinking the technique starts. Oh, he's closing on me now. The technique starts. What do I do? Well, I do this. I do this. Yeah. Actually, from the moment you're being, you say yin dao, from the moment the attack started to happen, the whole process started to kick in, and actually you're already halfway through the thing by the time whatever you move you apply, or however you move, by the time, for want of a better phrase, there's that contact between the two surfaces.
Yeah.
You should have been 20 years of doing that.
Yeah.
You should still be doing, whether it's that he's moved slowly, or it's that, or that, to use a Xing Yi thing, because it would be the same, wouldn't it? It would be, because, you know, drummer boy thing, what's that? We know what it is. Yeah, there you go, swan. You know, so I'm not looking at, oh, it's moved quickly. It's the same thing. So, as you say, that's the thing. If you're not moving naturally, as you call it, in the pre-movement stage, after doing it for so many years, you need to understand you're not doing that, and you need to address it internally, I think, because those guys that have been in that for a long time, if they're not, should be asking why they're not.
Yeah, exactly right. But again,
up to themselves, not from my ego. I don't what they do, what they do.
Exactly. But that's part of the process, isn't it? I mean, it's this concept that it's critical thinking. It's not criticism. It's critical thinking. It's going back and saying, okay, what am I doing wrong? Why does it feel wrong? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it feel indifferent? Do I not even feel what's going on? I don't know. And that's where you have the theory, because you have this dialogue between the theory and how you feel, and that's the metric. It's how it feels. That's the measure. But if you don't know what the theory is, you've got no idea what you're actually measuring that up against. What happens is that you vaguely go off into the distance, and you get gung fu. You keep on practicing, but you don't actually, in the great scheme of things, improve in the art.
No,
because you've got no concept of really what the art is, and I think that happens a lot. Yeah,
and you see it a lot in probably in other schools demos, with the advent of modern, internet, DVDs, things like that.
Yeah.
But it'll be the technique. I mean, there's a lot out there. It's kind of, and you move in, and then they'll show the application of the technique, but they'll never be talking about the underlying principle of how they're arriving at that. So they're only ever mimicking a technique. They're not really understanding how to move, as it were.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So anyone watching it will never learn, really.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I've seen in the recent past is things like the conversations, things like, I'm doing Aikido. I came up against a boxer. My Aikido didn't work. Or what's better, Aikido or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And these are questions which are meaningless. It's not the system. It's the person.
Yeah.
So but for me, the actual distinction is also, are you doing Nei Jia or not? I mean, it's like the Dong Yong Fong thing. You say you do Xing Yi. Well, you show me, and I'll be honest enough to tell you whether you're doing Xing Yi or not. You see, so it's that discernment. It's actually, it's not saying, oh, let's go out the back and strip down to the waist and start beating the crap out of each other, and the best system is the person who wins. It's not saying that. It's no. The question is, are you doing Nei Jia or aren't you? And I think that when you have a look at people like Yamaguchi and Endo, there's a transcendence there.
Exactly. And normally it's a life experience that gives them that transcendence. Yeah. And people, I've certainly heard it, comments made about Endo, and I'm sure with Yamaguchi, and they say, oh, he was a maverick, he was a one-off. It was like, there are other good practitioners, but the two people whose energy was immense, and you'll know it because you'll see them there holding down 320 stone Westerners with effort.
Yeah. That
thing that's come through, you can call it the energy if you like, without being wishy-washy, or being thrown. You know that
it's real.
When they've thrown everything away internally, then they've arrived at the real thing.
Yeah.
To coin the ad.
But also the thing, to be blunt, is that you can see it. You know, you look at videos of what they're doing, and you see that they're doing Nei Jia. I mean, granted that there's Venn diagrams.
There are differences there,
of course. But the thing is that somewhere along the line, they've been taught that. And what's happened is that also the flip side, the reciprocal side, is that if you haven't been taught it, you'll never see it. You'll miss it, and because you're using the same metric, you're using the same paradigm to look at something that you've been taught, or lack of metric, the lack of measure, that you don't see it because you don't know what you're looking for. You see, and that was one of the things that struck me. That looking at the videos of both of them is that, granted they're not using reverse breathing, but bloody hell, stretch 5 ends and spiral motion. Thank you very much. They've got that to a T within the
it might not be an actual kind of boom.
Yeah, but it's within the environment that they're working within, and again, the whole point about this is. As you will know, because you come from an Aikido background, I come from a karate background. Is that what happens? Is that your character, your soul, whatever what we want to call it, comes through the art. I mean, that's the joy of it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it?
That's the whole thing, and so it may be, that you are imprinted to a certain extent, by the path that you walk.
Yeah.
But and that you'll also have individual nuances. You might like to do certain things in certain ways. I might like to do certain things in certain ways because of our character. We're different people. But what's fascinating is the way that Nei Jia kind of brings all this together, and you can pick and choose. It's like it's almost like cafeteria style martial art. You can go to a capoeira class and start doing capoeira and imprinting Nei Jia in it. You can go to an Aiki class and you can start doing Nei Jia. And what will happen is that the quality and the optimization of the movement will improve because of it. I think that's a real fundamental difference. Is that you're not just talking about quality of movement, because if you were doing that, you could take something like a contemporary dance person who's gone through the training of contemporary dance, and they're moving quite well. Their mobility is very good, but they're not necessarily doing Nei Jia. They wouldn't necessarily be a good martial artist. So again, the question is where is the join? Where is the link? Where is the separation? So it's part and parcel of Nei Jia that you're teaching people to move in a particular way, and part and parcel of that is very, very similar to what you would learn in a contemporary dance class. But there's a whole raft of other principles that are being applied to that movement quality, which changes it. So if you're a contemporary dancer, I can make you into a good martial artist. But if you're learning martial arts, what does that mean? You got to have a reference point. What are the principles that you're learning? And I think this comes down to, again, we were talking before, is that from the word go, right from the very first day, language was seen as to be very important, because if you're using the wrong language, then your understanding of what you have to do and what the principles are and what measures you're using with yourself to feel the quality of what you're doing changes. It's not as efficient, and it's almost like a get out that people use, like Japanese, Chinese, whatever, sort of the terminology, because it's a label. It doesn't actually tell you, or doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But then again, you see, if you see something like, I mean, we were talking about this earlier about Yen Dao Xiao Dao, you know, one sentence, you know, you translate that, you get the idea, you get it explained to you, and this whole Pandora's box of consequences, major consequences in terms of how you move, how you
also the legs,
perform this martial art.
Yeah, and also as you say, the opening moves of each of the three arts. By their nature, the legs are locked in, they're quite restrictive in that, you know, you have to open and close the inguinal arch and rotate Yin Dao Xiao Dao in Xing Yi. It's the fixed point ahead at the right height. You're opening and closing the shoulders, but you're still opening and closing the lower body, but you're not having the distraction of moving the legs. And Bagua, of course, that's possibly a little more external, but the same principles, if you know the same principles, you're rotating your Yin Dao Xiao Dao, your back, and you're kind of, alright, ostensibly you're not bending up and down and opening your arch, but then you've got so much more to do as well with the brushing and the striking, and also what Bagua's teaching you very obviously is that when this becomes curtailed and brought in, it becomes an end.
Yeah.
You know, which is, it's another thing for you to think about. So, but if you take the three, line them up against each other, but then how long does it take to kind of understand that? I suppose of the three, the clearest would be the Xing Yi opening, really, because it's really emphasising open, close, rotate. It's really giving you this head up, shoulders down. It's really giving you this, you know, you're opening this as well, and it's Yin Dao Xiao. So it's that's very clear in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it's geared towards clarity.
That's the point. I mean, you're spot on. I mean, you know, the usual phrase is that the form is so simple that you can't not see what you're doing if you understand the principles behind it, and that's and again, you know, you're right. That's the whole point. There's no ball. It's right, but the problem with that is that if you don't actually understand what you're supposed to be doing, it just becomes external, and the majority of people, I mean, 99.9% recurring of people
won't get it.
Won't get it. Don't do it.
No, I mean, actually, because in the Xing Yi opening, this has got the old arrows pointing towards the neck, the head up, and the trapezius down. So it's giving you that. Actually, what a great lesson that is. Look, that brings it all down and gives you this lovely alignment here and across the back. But it doesn't give you the possible variance in shoulder opening and closing. In Tai Chi, within Tai Chi, it can be a lot more of a grey area, and you're really learning about, as you said, when the shoulders can be drawn back and they can brush, they can still be open. They can inherently appear, for all intents and purposes, to be closed or open, and yet they might be the opposite. But that probably is something that comes through the layer of understanding as you go through the years.
The Tai Chi is, for design purposes, is much more complex in terms of the form.
It's layers within layers.
Yeah.
The little bombs on that curve. Yeah. You're thinking, oh yeah.
But essentially, it's the same. I mean, it's essentially the same art. I mean, in terms of what you're doing within the form, that So if we're talking about that, you know, they're all the same art, you know, to be blunt, but within the form, that Xingyi is much more closer to Tai Chi than either are to Bakwa, and the reason for that is essentially that the form templates that you're using within Xingyi are the similar ones that you're using in Tai Chi. You know, because in Bakwa you're on one foot a lot more of the time, and the reason for that is because the whole point behind Bakwa is that the question is, how do you improve the optimization of your movement? Well, that's about moving within gravity, which means placing one foot in front of the other, in other words, walking. So the Bakwa strips that down, that process down, much more, you know, much more tightly than in a sense the other two, because they both have they're all not both, sorry, all three of them have slightly different perspectives. But when I say both, I mean that the Tai Chi and Xingyi are much closer related in terms of that kind of form template than Bakwa is. Yeah, so you're getting that distinction. But I think you're right. Again, is that the complexity? I'm not talking about the difficulty of a movement. I'm talking about the spiral motion within within the movement, that you're getting much more variation within Tai Chi than you are with Xingyi, because with Tai Chi there's many more pictures. You know, with Xingyi you've just got your Wuxin, you've just got your 5 forms. I mean, basically. And in that you've really only got Bang. I mean, you know, the lesson that I was taught was that you learn Pi Chuan first because formally that's the most difficult one to get your head around. Then you learn something simple, which is Swan. So meanwhile, you know, you've started Pi Chuan, so that's going to take the longest time to get your act together with. So that we're going to start that one first. So that's in the background. You then do something simple like a giveaway Swan. So once you get a little bit of practice of that, then you give them Bung, which is the mother fist, and Bung is the template, the primordial piece of kit, the toolkit that you've been given, that strips everything down, that shows you everything that you need to do without any kind of complication. And then the last two, Swan and Hung, they're kind of like, you know, they're just add-ons, really. You don't really need them, and that's the reason why Dong Yung Fong used to just practice Bung, because once you know once you know what you're supposed to be doing, you can relate that to any piece of form. And if you've got a piece of form that gives you the correct feedback in terms of learning, that's all you need to do. You know? But again, you see, you know, you're looking at these pieces of form as questions, that you have a set of principles. How do I apply these principles to these particular questions? And then the questions, you know, they start easy and then they start getting more and more difficult. And that's the process. The process is actually to attempt to apply the principles that you know, and then get this kind of feedback, such that if you feel that that what you're doing is inconsistent, then something must be wrong. Well, you're wrong because the system can't be wrong. You know, the universe can't be wrong, so you must be wrong. So where are you wrong? So again, you're able to get this kind of feedback structure where you're continually teaching yourself, which is again coming back to the Aikido stuff. Is that it's much easier to get feedback by using another person, by using something, you know, a physical object, than it is on your own.
And then the payoff is kind of, for want of a better phrase, I don't like they say harmonise with their movement. You kind of got to join with their what they're doing to a certain extent. So that's why your own level has to be, and understanding has to be quite good, because they're going to, what's want of a better phrase, they might move like a lump of wood, for example. I'm not criticising. Which is probably easier martially to defend against. The payoff, the reward is the higher level they move using the tenets, the more both would benefit, experience and understand.
Yeah.
But then there is a reward to moving around them, because, as you say, everybody does different things, and that's where the advent of moving in the orderliness or the natural,
but it's
non-beingness of the situation happens. But
again, the kind of learning template that I use is that it's controlling the self and controlling the environment. So you get your act together. Start working on yourself.
You've got to be right yourself first.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's right.
And then you start getting the feedback structures to test whether what you're doing makes sense or not. And then you're dealing with different feedback structures, different people, different sizes, coming in hard, coming in softer. People who are better than you, people that aren't as experienced as you, and that's giving constant feedback to the way that you're feeling, how to move, how to do things. So I think it's and that's the reason why in this system you don't do partner work until you've got a number of years under your belt.
I think it was noticeable. I mean, the other day, I would probably say it was good for everybody, but it's like anything, isn't it? I suppose. Well, as we say, people move differently when you're not moving just in a gap and you and the gap, all of a sudden when the form arrives, the challenge is not to move in a different way, the challenge is to move in the right prescriptive way, no matter how they attack, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah, but that's where you have to go through pressure testing in that sense. But again, it's got to be step by step, because if you get something, you think about how people learn things. How do you learn anything? What happens is that you've given a piece of information, and you take that piece of information, you go somewhere that's slightly uncomfortable, you go somewhere into the unknown, and you see how that works, and you feel happy, you feel safe, okay? And then you give them a little bit more information, and you carry on in that way. And that way, you're getting this constant feedback between what you understand and what's occurring to you. But if that step is too large, you get dropped in the deep end, then your performance will suffer, but also you'll get scarred because you've been dropped in the deep end. The shock is too great, it's too much. So when you're teaching people, when you're learning, it's got to be a step-by-step process. But one of the things that I remember you saying years ago was that it's prescriptive. And I'd never thought of it that way, because it is. It's because the steps.
Yeah, prescriptive. From my point, because you gave me the principles.
Yeah. Relatively
early on, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whereas it might have taken you many, many years for it to become prescriptive.
No, I think that. I'm slightly more generous.
Yeah, well, but
that's not
when she gave that to you,
it's not necessarily a good thing to be too generous, But I think that.
But it's not. I mean, in the three principles, as you're saying, the three principles, it's there, but it could take anyone 70 years or never to apply them.
again, I think that's where you have to have a good teacher.
Yeah.
But also once you understand that being prescriptive is what I mean by that is that there are certain things. I joke about this all the time. Is that you can swap around bits of the form, and that's fine because there's a reason you're doing it. It's because it's not breaking any kind of core principles. It's a teaching tool. And I learned the same way. There were the bits that of the form that I learned that were swapped around in the sequence. And some people would turn around and go, "Oh my God, this thing's been around for 5,000 years, and you've got the nerve to swap, form number 24 with form number 15. Oh my God, what have you done?" And that's okay. But we've got to help you if you break one of the principles, because then you're not doing Nei Jia. You see, which again comes back to one of the things that I really liked about what you were saying is that, and then that was, and again it resonated with the kind of the concepts that I'd been taught, which was you learn something, and I was lucky. I learnt this early on. Basically, you shut your mouth, you crack on, and if you dare ask a question, bloody well make sure that it's the right one. Yeah. But what you do is that you learn it, and then you start to break it apart. And then, in the course of breaking it apart, you put the thing back together again. And if you, in the course of putting it back together again, are still applying the same principles, the core tenets of the system, then that's the aim. That you've basically done your job. Yeah, you may not necessarily be able to do that.
No.
But in the course of actually attempting to do that, that's really what you're looking for. So in our case, is that you can have insight, you can be blessed with knowing everything you need to know about the system, but you may not necessarily can do it. So the whole point is that you take this stuff, you learn it, you break it down, and then you come back again. If you're doing something different that goes against the principles, then you're doing something different. You're doing another system. And part of that process is fundamental. The part of that process is fundamental to you learning Nei Jia, because it's based on this kind of ping pong act of having the principles, having the toolkit given to you, and then using the toolkit to feel how you're going down that route. And you'll go down cul-de-sacs, you'll come back, you go all over the place, but underlying that is this fundamental set of principles that are guiding you in the right direction. And it's that game that allows you to progress. It's that game that you're using to test it, to look at it critically without overthinking it, that allows you to progress in the art.
Yeah.
As opposed to just getting gung fu.
Right, which is why, coming back to what you said about the calligraphy, that was a big thing. There's 3 different types of calligraphy, but effectively sit down, sit straight. I've been over the fact of the walk of you, and actually, whenever you do move in a circular fashion, if you do want to move with a straight around a spot, the one thing you do have to do and can't cheat is you have to use this reverse breathing, and you have to use this mechanism. It's the one of the 3 arts. It's the one, because you're on one leg, you really have to utilise this correctly. I've lost my train of thought. Which is
calligraphy.
Yeah, which. So coming round now to the calligraphy point of view, a la spiral motion, and I said this to the guys in Japan, and it blew them away.
Yeah.
This kind of, stretch. That or or that, or however you want to do it, but the kind of, you know, you said the middle hair of the brush used to be longer than the others. Well, there it is, there it is, and actually you have to kind of do that thing and draw it back, and that's slightly longer than the others, and that means here is in essence a lesson that isn't even vaguely abstract. It's actually couched in very clear terms, instructional, in an instructional exercise, how to, here's my plane, here I am, I now want to rotate to move to that point. If I'm using those tenets and I've got, my hand is a brush is the other hairs of a brush, and this one's longer than the others, and I move that, and here's this, and by the way this is straight, and there's a bit of yin dash or whatever, and I want to move this arm to that point. No longer is it a abstract point about spiral motion. It now becomes a very real. Because now what I'm doing, I'm locked in here. There's my middle finger. Now it comes back in, but also not only that. My spine's straight, my shoulders opening. I'm rotating through my central hair. And whether I'm doing that or that, you know, it's there. And this thing, everything that's happened here, as you would say, it's an algorithmic result of merely sitting down straight from a calligraphy exercise. Is my Venn diagram, and it's superimposed on the top. There we go. Even if you're not breathing, you have using internal reverse Taoist breathing, which we are, but because that puts life into the brush, we know it's another. But in this very example, what I'm saying is, what have I learnt here by keeping just a spine straight and engaging my cells and sitting with a straight spine, simply by doing that exercise, whether it's kind of that. I mean, I actually like this kind of. I like to do it the other way, because that kind of. That just, you know, that opening. But it gives you so much there, and it's all there, and you don't have to do anything more to understand that. Now, if you take that, and then 10 years down the line you apply that to your Nei Jia with the, well, this is how you have to walk in Bagua, and well, you know, 5 ends, as you say, bung, whatever it is, it's very clear. You can't cheat those things, because there's certain instances peppered across these 3 arts where it's in that groove and you can't cheat it. You can't rotate doing a bit of calligraphy. You can't actually go and it's a flat thing. I mean, you could do that.
People do, because the different. I mean, again, I would, you know, dare to make the distinction between what we do and other systems is that the way that I learned calligraphy is that yes, you are being told that there's a single hair that goes down the centre of the brush. That's your central line. Okay? But what really hits you between the eyes is when you're actually using spiral motion with the brush. You're not just plonking the thing down. You know, that you're using that calligraphy brush in a way that's spiral, and you're taught that, using reverse breathing, and you're taught that to stretch 5 ends. You're taught that continuity of movement. You're taught this concept of creative destructive cycle, because that's what you're using as part of the state of being to create that character on the page. And so when somebody turns around and goes, you know, that there's a single line, there's a single hair that goes down the centre of the brush, it's like, holy crap! There's a single hair that goes down the centre of, you know. It's like fundamental smack between the eyes, as opposed to, oh yeah, okay, so there's a hair that goes down the centre of the brush, and understand, you know,
but it's there for a purpose, and the instructional purpose is actually very clear. I don't think there's no hidden cryptic Taoist diagram in that. It's very clear there. What's it teaching me? It's teaching me that if I've got a point here and I rotate a central hair to there, it's actually teaching me how to open and close correctly. Again, something I never knew before. Yeah. But with that, over time, I came to realise that.
Also, the thing is that what you have is that well, rather what you don't have is, in a sense, an accumulation of forms. Because what could be very easily done is, when I joined Miss Lee, I if I got the chance, I'd sign up for anything. That if a calligraphy class came along, I'm there. I'm signing up to do it. Which is very different. The whole process is very different to first learning short form, then learning long form, then learning sword, then learning halberd, then learning Dao, then learning this, that. Because what's happening is you're just getting an accumulation of forms. Whereas what we're doing, or what I was doing with regards to calligraphy, it was actually an adjunct. It was actually helping me understand. It was looking at the system from a slightly different perspective.
Which is, I think,
which
is the value we're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely remarkable, because basically what's happening is that you're doing practice and improving your practice by doing something which doesn't necessarily look like you're doing practice. And so when somebody turns around and says, or when you read the pen and the sword as one, good calligraphers were good swordsmen. And again you can take that and you go, yeah, okay, because a sword is an extension of the hand, and you're able to see a lot easier the movement, the spiral motion of a sword. If you extend the arm, But when you then go and say calligraphy, it's the same as sword work. It's like, again, holy crap! This is fundamental. The principles that underlie it. It's like earth-shattering. So the emotional kind of response, the opening up of how you're actually moving in this particular way, is very acute. It's very stark, because it's giving you a set of information points that you can use, that you can start investigating, start taking that onto that journey. It's not just, okay, well, I'm learning this form now, and that's the reason why it never ends, because you're always on that journey. You're always investigating this movement paradigm.
Yeah, and what I like about that, the same as the circle walking, with you must breathe like a wounded animal. It's sucking it through. You have to use that muscle, that breathing apparatus correctly. What I like about that kind of opening and closing, is coming back to the other thing. It's a lot subtler to, when is a shoulder open?
Yeah.
When is an armpit open? You talk about the oranges out here.
Yeah.
This is obviously, if people don't understand, they'll walk around as if they've got oranges under their arm, because they don't understand actually that's open, or actually that can be open. I mean, obviously, the great thing about this, it's very clearly also an open shoulder, but what you've learned is you're learning how to rotate around your central axis line. And it's teaching you this is patently an open shoulder. But of course, when you're coming to Tai Chi and things like that, it was some crazy thing, and it was okay. Well, there's different levels of. It might take some years for you to realise that there are certain cases when a shoulder's open and a shoulder's closed, and even though it appears ostensibly closed, it might be open, because even though it's closed ostensibly at the pit, Tai Chi strike is a perfect example. Yeah. Actually, and in fact, and here's another thing, another aha moment, as in the daguerreotype, type, or the, which is the kind of, if you brush and strike and drop that and strike correctly, you'll feel the correct alignment of the strike through the lats. But actually, it's only a brush and a slight opening, but that's at another level again.
It's layered, yeah.
But that kind of, I mean, that was another thing, and I think you said, oh, against the wall, and that kind of, that alignment there, through there it is, you know, that kind of,
it's pure power,
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now I know that, but now I can close that, and because I know that, a few years later, I'm brushing, I'm not doing that and making that obviously open, but I'm doing that brush thing. I'm feeling that this, even though that's slightly brushed. Yeah. Now, at an earlier level, I thought, oh, that's not good. The shoulder's not open, but actually, this strike is really powerful, and I know that I know that it's open. Even though I'm not doing that, I'm doing that. And I know that alignment's correct. Because it's the feeling it's now right, because I've moved on to from that tool to understanding that. Well, in this particular context or situation, that's right. Now that alignment has given me something else. It's taught me the connection between here, the lat, and the load, that kind of reverse diamond. You really feel that in that. And there you go. So there's another lesson, but it's a subtler lesson. It's the wheel within the wheel. I have to know that in order to be able to know that.
It's because you're moving away from the kind of gross movement, the picture that you've seen that in your own head or seen, you know, what you've been taught. That you're moving from that to the kind the relationship between each individual set of bones around those joint complexes.
Yeah.
So it's
and you feel you become much more sensitised to, and it's still a thing, and it's actually your fault, and I'm blaming it squarely.
That's all right.
It's falling on your shoulders, I'm afraid. I walk down the road and I see people kind of doing this, but I don't see kind of, you know, but I see this area, particularly the traps, and this square back, and I see the traps as a dead thing. A lot of people, they're very dead in the traps. Yeah. You know, there's no, and that kind of annoys me actually.
Yeah. because what's happening is that you're not getting full movement of the body. So again, you know, when people talk about when you move, it's a total body movement. The reason why they're walking like that down the road is because certain parts of their body aren't actually moving, and what's happening is that the gross movement has taken over because they've lost that mobility.
Yeah. Particularly up here.
Particularly
this
in
connection
the shoulders,
to here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because a lot of successful footballers and really high level sportsmen have kind of you can see their traps. It's quite interesting. It's not just a flat thing. There's a little connection there. So obviously there's some brain connection between this upper body movement and the integration of everything.
Yeah, because what you have is you have a girdle across the hips, and you have a girdle across here, and this girdle is essentially allowing your body to do this. So if you walk, your body naturally rotates around the central line, around your central vertical axis. But if you stop doing that movement, then if you stop moving those girdles, this part, if you stop rotating around your central line in opposition, then what happens is that freezes up.
Again, opening move, it brings into play the traps, the rotation and the looking back and the strike. That's the gift of the opening move. Another strength of the opening move of bowlplay, isn't it? Where it's, you don't want it to be tense, but at the same time, if you're dropping it and it becomes a rotational strike, it drops that and pulls it out sideways, and you move into the space while striking with it.
That groove.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It comes back to what we're talking about Aikido, in that it's not a technique. Is that what you're doing is actually to learn the move, to learn the throw. The secret of the throw isn't the technique.
No.
It's actually starting to take those building blocks, those Lego bricks, and slowly put those Lego bricks together, so over a period of time, and then when you have the full set of Lego bricks together, that's when the thing works. So the secret, if anything, of the technique is not to learn the technique and to perform it more and more efficiently. It's actually to take the technique apart, see what principles are underlying that set of movement sequences, and then that allows you to perform what looks like the technique. It's just a series of these building blocks put together in a particular way that allows you to undertake what people think is a technique. There's no technique.
No.
There's no technique.